What's up, everyone? Monster Master Godzilla here, and I'm here to continue my reviews of the Spider-Man-A-Thon. We're now up to Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this one is the third Spider-Man in the movie in the MCU, and this one is my favorite of the Spider-Man trilogy in the MCU, and it's like the most epic of the Homecoming trilogy. No Way Home. Where do I begin with this one? Oh boy. This one came out in 2021. And it was during the pandemic when it also finished filming when everyone got before the world went on lockdown from the pandemic. And so what I can say is that this one takes place, of course, after No Way Home. Mysterio is dead. The world now found out who Spider-Man really is after he exposed his true identity to the world. And so Peter, MJ, and Ned all knew about what happened in the world, and his world got screwed around. And so when Peter ends up going back to his apartment, where Aunt May and Happy Hogan are together, they had tried hiding into the apartment, but then Peter got taken to the police, and got taken in by the police station, and they thought he would, and trying to think that he murdered Mysterio with his technology, but and it turns out he tried to convince him that he didn't do anything about it. That was Stark's technology, but he didn't kill Mysterio. And so basically Mysterio had framed him for all that, put the blame on him, so it incriminated Peter. And then after that, the whole school wound up thinking of him as a celebrity. And also, and the one coolest thing about the cameo is that Charlie Cox appeared in it, who he appeared in the movie as Matt Murdock in the film. And this is not his first time being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Matt Murdock. Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil, had appeared in the Netflix TV series which is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Netflix series had canceled it after 3 seasons, and finally Matt Murdock makes a cameo in the MCU film, which is the first time we saw a Netflix character, a Marvel Cinematic Universe Netflix character appear on the big screen. So then Matt ends up having a phone call, and everything is so he found out everything was like almost completely cleared Peter's name, and when people are harassing him and thinking he's a criminal still, someone tried throwing a brick at Peter, and Matt had caught it in his hand, and Peter was surprised at how he did that, given the fact that Matt Murdock is blind. He said, "How do you do that?" He said, "I'm a really good lawyer." And so, after they try going and hiding in Stark's place, Peter seeked trying to get help trying to get some help, figure out how to start his life all over again after his life got screwed up after Mysterio gave up his true identity to the world and framed him for committing a murder, which he never, and blamed him for a crime he didn't commit. And so he ends up getting help from Doctor Strange, which is after Avengers Endgame after Infinity War and Endgame. The first time Spider-Man and Doctor Strange interacted was on Avengers Infinity War. And he says, "I'm Peter Parker, Doctor Strange." "Oh, we're using our made-up names. I'm Spider-Man." He said, because he didn't realize Doctor Strange was actually his real name. So, and he said, "Steven." And he said, Doctor, and we're past that. You can call me Steven. So then he asked for Doctor Strange's help so he can, like, make the world forget that he's Spider-Man, but Peter ends up botching the spell. But when he botched the spell, the whole strangers from different worlds had a dimensional rift, causing strangers from different worlds get transported into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like Alfred Molina is back as Doc Ock, Willem Dafoe is back as the Green Goblin, Jamie Foxx is back as Electro, Thomas Hayden Church is back as the Sandman, and Rhys Ifans is back as the Lizard. So yes, this is the first time we got to see all 5 villains, like, from the interdimensional universe. Like, it's just something I never thought I'd see, seeing Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and the Sandman from the Sam Raimi trilogy together in one movie, along with being with Electro and the Lizard from Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. And what's awesome about it is that they actually, as they end up having a multiverse situation where the characters got to where the worlds end up colliding, they made references to all the past movies. So many callbacks. Like when Doc Ock first appeared, he said, "Hello, Peter." And then Spider-Man ends up saying, "I'm sorry, do I know you?" And during the battle, Doc Ock thought he was battling Tobey Maguire when he says, you're not Peter Parker." And he explains, "I am Peter Parker, but not your Peter Parker." So then when Spider-Man's suit right here, which is one that he's wearing right here, got mixed in with the tentacles, Doc Ock's tentacles, he ends up controlling them and taking him prisoner. And then he ends up seeing Doc Ock, and both Peter and Doc Ock wound up seeing the Green Goblin, and old Green Goblin and old Octavius was like, "Osborn?" Thought it was weird. This is because he recalled them finding out that he died. And then as they got captured, and both Ned and found out, they thought it was a dinosaur at first when they captured the Lizard. Doctor Strange already captured the Lizard, but then brought in Dr. Octavius prisoner. And they all made fun of it. They also made fun of the name, saying, and then when MJ was revealed to be Michelle Jones Watson, which is close to being Mary Jane, and Ned, his full name got to be confirmed to be Ned Leeds, who would later become the Hobgoblin. So the villains end up finding out they're in a different world. The Green Goblin finds himself and realizes he's in a different world. And what's disappointing is that we got to see Willem Dafoe back as the Green Goblin in his costume again. But the mask, he ends up smashing the mask, and he ends up leaving it behind. Just so you thought he's going to keep the mask, but nope. He was only there briefly. The first time in the trailer, we end up finding out that he threw the pumpkin grenade, and you hear him laugh. And you end up hearing the famous line through the trailer. And so, which is a big line. And so Peter ends up using the same suit, but it's in reverse, which looks like it's black with gold. And this time he ends up finding both the Sandman and Electro. And then when he got into a fight with Electro, Jamie Foxx ends up having a different look as Electro, and it looks like, and eventually ends up looking like this. And the Sandman finally appears. This time he's looking like he's really made out of sand throughout most of the movie to match the MCU look. And then when the Sandman shows up, he says, "Peter, it's me, Flint. You remember me? It's me, Flint." And then Peter's like saying, "Hi, yeah, sorry, but I'm not your Peter." "What do you mean you're not my Peter?" "Yeah, like the MC, like the Doc Ock. He thought he was talking to Tobey Maguire." So then, as all the villains, all four of the villains got together, all imprisoned, the Peter ends up finding Doc Ock, ends up finding Green Goblin finding Norman at the feast, which was the name of the foundation that Aunt May, which is the name of the place of business that Aunt May runs for homeless people. And he says, and so then Norman mentions that someone else is living in his home, and Oscorp doesn't exist. Yes, in the MCU, Oscorp doesn't exist in the MCU. Well, yet, anyway. Which I got a feeling it's probably that Oscorp hasn't... Which I have a theory that it could have been a variant of Norman Osborn and native to the MCU that we didn't know exists, and Oscorp hasn't officially opened for business yet. Just saying fan theory. It's theoretical, folks. I'm just saying that. I mean, I just don't know. But I like to believe that's probably the case. That would sound like a good twist for the MCU. I mean, think about it. In the Avengers, it took place in New York and Spider-Man was nowhere to be seen. So that's when I figured maybe Peter hasn't become Spider-Man in the MCU at that point. And I was right. It happened. So they actually found out. And so then he realized. So after the Green Goblin was taken to the Doctor Strange's lair, he ends up meeting Octavius face to face, and they were like this: "Octavius, Osborn, what's going on?" And he said, "You're the walking corpse. What do you mean? You died, Norman, years ago." So yeah, they all referenced what happened in the past movies. And so yeah, they realized they both died. So Peter from the MCU got confused, saying, "What do you mean he died? What are you talking about?" And Sandman intervened, saying, "Dead. They both died fighting Spider-Man. It was all over the news. The Green Goblin impaled by the glider he flew around on, and then a couple of years later, Doc Ock went down in the bottom of the river with his machine." And so then the Doc Ock was saying, "That's nonsense. I had Spider-Man right there by the throat, and I was about to have power of the sun with my machine." And then next thing is, and he froze, realizing he died in his world. In that world. And then Electro was like thinking, "Let me tell you something. I was whooping Spider-Man's ass. I was about to turn into pure electric energy, and I was absorbing data, and the next thing is, oh shit." So yeah, three of the villains realized they all died. But the Sandman lived, and the Lizard lived. So Peter wanted to save them. He didn't want them to die, so he wanted to help them. He wanted to help them go back to their lives, go back to being normal, and prevent them from dying. To cure them, trying to cure them before they died. But Peter and Doctor Strange end up fighting about it, and he ended up escaping from Doctor Strange. So the villains end up going to the Stark's quarters to make the cures. So then all of a sudden, the Green Goblin ends up reverting back to his true nature, where he has the split personality of the Green Goblin. And after the Doc Ock got his mechanical arms fixed, where he can control the arms instead of the arms controlling him. So, and then it caused Doc Ock to be redeemed. And so the whole movie, we end up having a Sinister 6, which is more of a Sinister 5 throughout the majority of the film. which I will explain why. It's could have been a Sinister Six, when for the majority of the film it was a Sinister Five. So so then Green Goblin, as Norman reverts back to being Green Goblin, he says to the MCU, he says to Peter, Peter, you are struggling to have everything you want, while the world makes you choose. So he ends up causing the rampage. He ends up causing mayhem, and then the Sandman and Electro, and the Electro is also given Stark's power tube right on his chest, where he has more control of his electric powers. So where he has less of an overload before dying. So then after that, Electro, Sandman, and the Lizard end up continuing their rampage, and the Green Goblin ends up reverting back to his state of mind. And it didn't work out at first when trying to cure him, but it was backfired. And then he ends up killing. But then when Aunt May was there, the Green Goblin ends up killing Aunt May. Peter tries to save her, but then only to find out that Aunt May dies. And that's when Aunt May ends up telling Peter the iconic line, "With great power comes great responsibility." And so after that, Peter ends up shutting down and ends up going away, hiding somewhere on top of the school, beating himself up that he couldn't save Aunt May. And then MJ and Ned tried using Doctor Strange's magic to find Peter. He's saying, and then Ned's like saying, "Find Peter Parker." Oh yeah, the Green Goblin was also given a new look, and this time without the mask. He was given the goggles, and he's wearing like a hooded purple sleeveless hoodie, where it has a purple hood and with the purple sleeves, and it made it more close to the comic book without the mask, that is. So Ned and Michelle and MJ tried finding Peter Parker, but only to find out he ended up bringing in Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man. Ended up bringing Andrew Garfield into the MCU, along with Tobey Maguire. And my God, when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire got back on screen, my jaws dropped, and I was so happy. I was most happy seeing Tobey Maguire back on the big screen, the legendary Spider-Man back on the big screen. So then Andrew Garfield's like, it's okay, I'm a nice guy. And he unmasks himself and shows himself. And then they didn't believe that he's Peter Parker. All the rest of both MJ and Ned didn't believe that he's Peter Parker from another dimension. And then when they introduced Tobey Maguire in there, he's like saying, "Hello, I hope it's okay. Gate's closed." So that's one of those. So yes, No Way Home is also is one of those movies that led up to the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So then they tried finding Peter Parker, the MCU Peter Parker, and how they do it is that what they do to take things away from their mind as relaxation. They said that Tobey Maguire hangs out at the Chrysler Building. Andrew Garfield ends up going on the Empire State Building, and they both agreed that it was a good view. And so MCU Peter ends up having got to be on screen with both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, which is a big dream come true to see all three Spider-Man together on the big screen. So here's what their reaction is when they learned each other. And Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland ends up beating himself up for Aunt May's death. And he's saying, this is all my fault. I'm sorry I brought you into this. I'm going to have to send you all back home. And then Tobey Maguire says, I can understand that when they learned about with great power comes great responsibility. And they learned about the same phrase because both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield learned that from their Uncle Ben, while Tom Holland only learned that from Andrew Garfield, from Aunt May. So they even referenced Uncle Ben. So Tobey Maguire mentions that both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire lost their Uncle Ben. But they mentioned something different about who they lost. And Tobey Maguire says, my Uncle Ben was killed. I went after the man who I thought did it. But that didn't make any better. But then Andrew Garfield says, I lost Gwen. She was my MJ. I could never forgive myself. And for some reason I stopped throwing my punches and I stopped and I only kept doing it because I know Gwen wanted me to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So then Tom Holland, so then Peter ends up cooperating with the other Peters, and they all work together, and they both figure out ways to, and they end up figuring out ways to cure the members of their universes. And so the funniest thing is that Ned was asking Peter, and all the Peters both all respond, which is hilarious because they're all Peter Parker. And they eventually start pointing fingers on each other, and who was which became a famous meme. And so Toby and Andrew ends up. So then Toby and Andrew ends up making references to each other about their universes. Like Ned ends up asking Toby if he had a best friend, and Toby referenced Harry Osborn, saying, "I did have a best friend. He died in my arms after he tried to kill me." And so after they got the cures made, they talked about going to the battle, and they asked if, and Tom ends up asking if anybody got enough web fluid, and then Toby ends up showing webbing out of his arm, and they were amazed and both Tom and Andrew were amazed by that, and they because naturally they were curious of how that works. And when they're talking about going to battle, Andrew ends up having a funny moment with Tobey Maguire, saying, "Wait, are you going to go into battle dressed as a cool youth pastor, or you got your suit?" And then shows his costume, and it's a big impact to seeing Tobey Maguire dressed as Spider-Man again. And so, in the final battle, they were waiting for their enemies on the Statue of Liberty. And all the Spider-Men got to learn each other's universes. So it started off when Toby was having some back problem, saying, "My back is stiff from all the swinging, I guess. I know, I got a middle back problem too. Want me to crack it?" And he's like, "Yeah, that'll be awesome." "Oh, that feels better," they thought. So then Andrew got very curious, saying, "So you can make web fluid in your body?" He's saying, "I'd rather not talk about this one. I don't mean it's personal. I don't mean to pry. I'm just wondering." And he's like, "Wait, are you teasing me?" He's saying, "No, I'm not teasing you." And Andrew, and then Toby and Tom saying, "No, he's not teasing you. He's just wondering that we can't do that. It's just we can't do that. So naturally, we're just curious to see how your web shoot situation works." And so Andrew Garfield Andrew ends up mentioning that both Andrew and Tom end up mentioning to Tobey Maguire that they run out of webs all the time. They had to build their webs in a lab, and it was a hassle because they have web shooters while Tobey Maguire doesn't, and it's a hassle. and Toby and Andrew ask, "You never had a web block?" You never had a web block? Because I have run out of webs all the time. I have to make my webs in a lab, and it's a hassle, and it sounds like a hassle. And Tobey Maguire actually referenced Spider-Man 2, when he actually did have a web block through existential crisis stuff. So, and they actually asked about, what are the weirdest villains you've fought? And Tobey answered, seems you met some of them. And the No Way Home actually referenced the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, when Andrew says, and Spider-Man, and then the Tobey Maguire referenced Spider-Man at the end of Spider-Man 3, when Andrew Garfield says, Tobey Maguire says, I fought an alien made out of black goo once, and that's Venom that they referenced. And then Tom Holland got excited, saying, "No way! I fought an alien too, both on land and both on Earth and in space. And he's big and purple, and he's referring to Thanos." And Andrew Garfield felt left out, saying, "I want to fight an alien. I'm late compared to the two of you," because he explains that in the end of Amazing Spider-Man 3, at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, he fought a rhino in a big Russian and a big rhinoceros machine, which he's referring to the rhino. And so they learn each other's universes. So yeah, Toby was amazed of how Tom fought an alien both on Earth and in space. And both versions of Spider-Man never heard of the Avengers, because they don't have the Avengers in their universes, or at least they know of. And right when they teamed up, and the funniest thing is about the Avengers that Andrew Garfield thought it was the name of a band. And then in the battles, during the final battles, they managed to cure both the Sandman, the Lizard, and Electro. And when Electro ends up being cured, Andrew Garfield unmasks himself as Spider-Man, and then Jamie Foxx and Electro could have sworn there might have been a black Spider-Man somewhere. Maybe one day, Max, he says. Because that's referencing Miles Morales, which is a black Spider-Man. And then eventually the final battle shows that they finally got to the Green Goblin, and then when he says, "Can Spider-Man come out and play?" which was what happened in the final battle of Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire. And so when they got up to the final battle, both Tom and the Green Goblin ends up fighting, and it ends where they're saying, "Poor Peter, too weak to send me home to die." And that's when Tom Holland actually snapped and tries to kill the Green Goblin in the final battle. And during the final battle, Tom almost tried to kill Green Goblin with the glider, but Tobey Maguire ends up stopping him from stabbing him. But just when Tobey ended up preventing Tom from killing the Green Goblin ends up stabbing the Tobey Maguire, which, oh boy, that scared the hell out of me. Got me started in the theaters. I remember when I saw it in the theaters, that scared the hell out of me. I thought Tobey Maguire was gonna die, but it turns out he ended up surviving. Because in the final battle, Tom ends up finally curing the Green Goblin, and the world is saved. And so, then after that, all three of the Spider-Mans hugged each other goodbye. And also, because this is in the MCU, all three of the Spider-Man got their names of variants. Tobey Maguire is referred to as the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, while Andrew Garfield is called the Amazing Spider-Man, while Tom Holland is just Spider-Man, which makes sense because different comic books. It's like putting three different versions of Batman together. One gets to be referred to as the Dark Knight, one gets to be referred to as the Caped Crusader, and the one gets to be referred to as the world's greatest detective. So as the world as the so then Doctor Strange tries preventing all the dimensional rifts from happening, where it gave us some Easter eggs like showing Black Cat, Kraven the Hunter, the Doppelganger, the Rhino, and he prevented all that from coming into the whole universe and after the dimensional rifts are stopped, Doctor Strange finally sends all the characters back into their proper universes, and it was a farewell. And then he wound up erasing, and then Peter ends up saying goodbye to MJ. They have their goodbye kiss. And so same goes with Ned. They all said their goodbyes. And then caused a dimensional rift. And after that, Doctor Strange made the whole world forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And so Peter got to start his life as Spider-Man all over again. And so he got to meet his Aunt May at the funeral at his grave one last time. And he even got to say goodbye to Happy Hogan, even though Happy doesn't remember him anymore. He almost made an attempt to say hi to Ned and MJ, but he prevented himself from that. So he did that. He gave up Ned and MJ to protect them. And after that, Peter ends up moving into an apartment. Oh yeah, in between all that, he actually got a new costume later on, which this time looking like in the final battle, he ends up getting a new costume, which is a combination of different Stark suits. One was the Far From Home suit combined with the Iron Spider with the Gold Spider on his chest, and that's pretty much that one. And after Peter ends up moving into an apartment, he ends up donning a new costume. This time, it's more comic accurate. A more comic accurate costume. So then, when he heard there's a crime out there, Peter ends up going out for a swing in a new costume. This time it was more comic accurate, where it looks similar to the first Stark suit, but where it's red and blue, but without the Stark technology. So, where Peter finally got to be his own Spider-Man. Got to be the Spider-Man everyone wants him to be. And that's the very end of Spider-Man in the MCU. And they had a post-credit scene where Tom Hardy ends up appearing as Eddie Brock. And as Eddie Brock got sent back to his proper universe, a piece of the Venom symbiote got left behind, which is hinting out that Venom will appear in the MCU as well, and possibly find Peter, and he'll get the black suit as well. And the second post-credit scene was the trailer for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Yes, that's right. This is one of those things that led up to the Multiverse of Madness. They had three different Disney Plus TV shows, which are WandaVision, Loki, and season 1 of Loki, and Marvel's What If, with Spider-Man No Way Home, all led up to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So, this, I will have to say, folks, is I think this is the finest of the Spider-Man movies, which my favorite of the MCU trilogy. So my favorites of this one is, like, of course, the very first Spider-Man movie. So of all the Spider-Man trilogy, of all the Spider-Man films, each of the cinematic Spider-Man movies, that Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire's most popular film was the Spider-Man 2. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies was the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Tom Holland's most popular was No Way Home. So it comes in a little bit of full circle. So would I recommend this movie? Absolutely. This is you must have in your collection. But if you want a good understanding of what's going on, you have to watch all the Spider-Man movies from early days up until this one to get up until No Far From Home to get an understanding of what's going on. And that's all I have to say, folks. And as always, stay awesome, my Monster Masters, and stay amazing, my hardcore Spider-Man fans out there. And as always, I'll catch you later. And next up, we'll be reviewing Morbius. And after Morbius, I will be reviewing Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And that's all I have to say, folks. And as always, stay amazing, everybody. And I'll catch you later.